let's get started then. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time today to be here. My name is Shana. I'm the editor of Cosmopolitan, Sri Lanka. We have a stellar lineup of speakers today to talk to us about the impact of COVID-19 has had on small businesses like their own and discuss how we can possibly bounce back from this. We will jump right in with the speakers, and at the end, we will take questions if anyone has any, and then we can open it up for a discussion with everybody else. So we're starting with Randall De Silva. She's the CEO of Hatch and the director of GLX.
Thanks, Shiham. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining in on a Monday evening. Super excited to be here among this amazing businessmen and women. So just I think a snapshot, it's the end of the 7th week, right? And when all of this started, none of us really thought of it going for such a long term, affecting all of us, especially in the case of extending lockdown that seems to be just rolling on. So it was a very difficult situation, I think, for most of the businesses that I work with, as well as the businesses that I'm attached to, without having that long-term view of where is that light at the end of the tunnel. That there was absolutely no certainty. So to plan for that and to adjust to that, to settle with that uncertainty itself, I think it took a while for most of the small entrepreneurs who didn't have such a long runway, right, of a burn to afford in their business. So I think by now, a lot of people have shifted their perspective and mentality from where is the cash to where is the opportunity, which is the best way to look at it, really. Because if we are really going to hang on to the past or the difficulties of the present and really let that drown us, we won't be able to use this opportunity that we have in hand in order to really reinvent ourselves for tomorrow and really co-create our businesses and the communities that we work with. To be ready for tomorrow. So I think that's the best way to look at this as a small business of what we're all going through. And a few things I think to look at, if you haven't already, as a small business, is to do a quick health check. Have you spoken to your bank? Do you know what your finances look like for the next 3-4 months to come? How does that tally with your HR structure? How does that tally with your operations? Is your operational efficiency lean enough to tally with what you have in hand? If not, how is your work from home methodologies working out for your HR structure? If there is a difficulty, if the wheels are really not merging together and flowing out smoothly, even up to now, what are you going to do about it? So those are like the immediate short-term things that you have to look at, I think, that we all do. And then really to take this moment of isolation or lockdown to strengthen your core values, to really understand and re-emphasize why you're doing what you're doing. Because no entrepreneur who's doing business today is just merely doing it for profit purposes. There's a lot of more meaning to a lot of young and new entrepreneurs who are doing business today. So to really look at that value, which will help us then create deep and meaningful partnerships, which I think is really the key in going forward, because we really can't do this alone, and we shouldn't. Because there's a lot of things that we can share when we reinvent ourselves, when we create that tomorrow together. And we can only do that through trust and creating very deep and meaningful partnerships. And that we will only do if we understand our values very deeply and transparently. So that's one thing I would also look at and emphasize the importance of. And also, I think it's important we all talk about a new normal. We all understand that this is not the way that we used to do business. And this is not the 2020 that any of us look forward to. I mean, if we just go back in our diaries to 1st of January or 31st of December, we had no idea. So 2020 was going to be amazing, start of the new decade, all of that. But hey, now we're dealing with a new normal. So one thing to really also deeply understand is this new normal here to stay? How is our customers' behaviors changing? Is this behavior going to stick? If so, are we ready to make medium-term, short-term adaptation plans? Or are we really going to change to something that's going to not last for too long? So for us to really understand that, each of us will have different answers because all of us work with different customers, different products. The segments are very different, but that's why it's very important to also have that peer support and the peer exchange within your community, within your industry, to have those dialogues going so that we are not really making decisions on our own, and we are attuned to the behavior of the customers and also the market trends that will arise with the new normal and with the new tomorrow that we're all trying to create together. So overall, I'd love to look at this as a great opportunity, and we can only make it happen if we look at it that way.
Thank you, Randhula. Next up, we have Rukshika and Binara, Senevirathne, the founders of resort wear brand RUMPUNCH.
Hi. So I'm Rukshi, and this is Binara. So he's going to talk about the first few points of the business. Yeah.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Randhula, for that intro, and kind of leads on to some of the points that we want to touch on. So the point that we were given was actually making the most of this situation, and how we looked at this was actually how do you survive the situation first before you get the opportunities that actually Randhula touched on. Excuse me, my area is a bit operational, so just bear with me. I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. So just a bit of context in terms of our business. If you look at where we are positioned, it's primarily known as a swimwear brand, even though we have certain elements that go as resort wear or active wear. Apart from that, if you look at our business overall, it's 70 to 80% from Sri Lanka and 95% offline. When this crisis hit, so if you look at March year to date compared with the previous March, the business was hit by about a 75% decrease in turnover overall. But what's interesting is that our revenue mix has changed, so we're actually getting 95% from online as opposed to 95% offline now. So there's been a complete flip in terms of where our revenue streams are coming. Geographically, not too much change. It's about 80 to 90% from Sri Lanka as opposed to 80% earlier. Okay, so with that in mind, what do we do? So in the first, pretty much as soon as this happened, we kind of looked at our cash flows very critically and just kind of did a projection to understand what the next 9 months would look like. Kind of broke it down into each quarter with some assumptions in mind. So, I mean, it depends on your business and how you want to look at it, but we, for example, might have just taken the second quarter, the quarter that we're in, where we don't have any revenue, and then kind of look how we manage our expenses depending on our reserves. So that was kind of the thinking that we had. So look at the cash flow, what do we have in terms of cash flow and how do we manage that? So the second step was really looking at our expenses. What are variable costs or fixed costs and how do we manage those? Obviously, the more variable costs you have, the more flexible you are. But another interesting thing as an example that we did was what could we do in-house? So be it social media content, even photo shoots. So we got Rukshika and her sister to actually do a photo shoot for our resort wear collection, because even if you could afford it, the studios are closed, the photographers are sometimes not available. So little things that we did to manage during this time that obviously helped our cash flow, but also helped the business continue. Finally, it was actually to review our stock pipeline, see what kind of inventory we have, be it our commitments to our suppliers. And we're really happy to say that we've actually not gone back on any of our commitments to our suppliers. We've actually kept those, and we've paid everyone that we had to, which is great. But we've had to take a call in terms of our future orders. What do we need? Looking at what we have. So we did a complete stock count, and then kind of took an assessment in terms of what do we need for the next 9 months, depending on our projections. So Rukshika will basically cover in terms of what have we done. So I touched really on expense management, cash flow. Rukshika will kind of look at the opportunities in terms of how we've thought of design and taking that forward.
Yeah, so I'll be talking about 3 points. The first point will be product positioning. So we realized that we need to pivot the whole, our business with the current situation. So home workouts are trending at the moment, and we do have products that you can wear for like home workouts. So the whole concept is beach to swim and, beach to bar and sweat to swim. So based on that, what we did a campaign with all the products that we can put it, that you can buy it for home workouts, and that's one of the projects that we did. And it's currently happening also at the moment. So we got in touch with like about 4 people, so Tharia and Alberto and so on, and we did a small campaign based on those workout plans. So the second point will be design. So designing based on what we have in-house. So we looked at what we have, and I'm designing some projects, and I'm doing some projects actually based on what we have at the moment, and the fabrics, the trims and everything, and I'm doing some projects based on those stuff. So the third point will be the range plan. So we looked at our sales over the last 2 years, and then we saw the high performing swimsuits or products, and so the designs that I'm doing at the moment are based on that analysis. So I'm taking the best styles and doing some tweaks and doing putting other stuff to make sure that the garments are looking trendy and also using the same patterns and everything. So those are the 3 points that I'm doing when it comes to design part of it.
Yeah, so this kind of summary was how do we manage our cash flow, expenses, and then after we kind of got a grip on that, how do we look at the new opportunities and take that forward for the business? Yeah.
Thank you, Binara. Thank you, Rukshi. Next, we have Natalie. She is the founder director of Pendi, design-based consultancy specializing in interior design and decor. Natalie, over to you.
Thanks, Shyam. Hi, everyone. Where do we start? Like, this whole situation has forced us to quite literally change our lives and change the way we look at things overnight. Human beings are creatures of habit, and like, we're okay with change as long as it happens slowly, a little by little, and we have time to adjust to that change. But in this case, we haven't had that. We've been like locked up and the keys taken away from us, and we're told, this is your new lifestyle, now deal with it. And we've had to think about, okay, now where am I going to get my food from? How am I going to get it? How am I going to pay from it? How am I going to get to the bank to get the cash? What am I going to do about work? Am I still going to have a job? How am I going to keep my business going? And with all of that also comes like all of the emotions and the anxiety and the stress, and there's a lot to cope with. And there's no way that any human being could deal with that alone. And I think the only way for all of us just to get, and that's just the everyday things. And even when it comes to work, the only way that we can get through this is if we put our heads together and if we work together. From the time we built Pendi, my husband and I focused on people. When we decided to do this and when we started actively looking for craftspeople to work with, for designers, for artists, for artisans, I remember we'd get in the car and we'd get a lead for somewhere. There was a metal welder or a carpenter or something, and we'd drive and go and speak to them. And for us, it wasn't just about finding a carpenter who could turn out the designs that we wanted. It was also about the relationship that we could build with them, because we were looking for people who are as excited and as passionate about us, about doing something new, about experimenting, about creating things, about failing and about trying again. And in the last 5 years, we've managed not only to find people, like-minded people to work with, but we've also been lucky enough to build relationships with them. Like with each of the craftspeople, we know their families, we know their family stories, where their kids go to school, how old their kids are. Even with the designers and the artists who contribute to the shop and who stock at Pendi, we know each one of them individually, and we know the story behind their brand and how much work has gone into it. And while we built Pendi, one of the things we encouraged very much was that, unlike in a lot of other places of work where there was competition and where there was kind of rivalry, instead we encouraged our designers and artists to help each other. It didn't matter if person A and person B were both making soaps. we encourage them to talk to each other and say, hey, you know what? I can get the ingredients. It's available at this location at a better rate. Or the ingredients at this place, they're more eco-friendly and they're better than using this. So we encourage that communication and that openness and that helping each other with their businesses right from the start. Since this crisis and since we've been forced to sit back and relook at the business and wonder, how are we going to take this forward? How are we going to work? Because in a situation like this, let's face it, like retail shopping is the last thing on everybody's mind. Like all of the designers and the artists and even the craftsmen, they kind of reached out to us. And just, you know, it started off just by a WhatsApp text or just by a phone call, just to see, how are you doing? Have you been able to get all the food that you need? How are you coping? Are you worried? Are you stressed? Are you okay? But it grew from there. And somebody said, hey, you know what? I know this person who's got passes and we can deliver. And somebody else said, you know, I can help you. I can do this. And what happened was we formed a group and we started sharing each other's skills and each other's, how shall I say, like each person had a strength, each person had something to contribute. So maybe one person could Photoshop and had like graphic designing experience, and they said, okay, I'm going to edit all the photographs and I'm going to help you put all your Instagram and Facebook posts together. I'm going to help you put your website together. Somebody else said, I can write, let me do the content for you. Somebody else said, I have a contact who can deliver all the products for you. So here's that contact. And before you know it, we started like getting up and running, and that's how we're able to now kind of operate and like deliver products at the moment. That kind of got us thinking about the future and also how we want Pendi to be in the future. What do we want from Pendi? What in the last 5 years that Pendi's been operating, what's been working really well, and what do we need to improve on? And I think the strength that we have is that we have this group of people who are willing to work together. And I think for a lot of small businesses going forward, I think that's something that I think we need to kind of put ego aside and put pride aside, because I think there's this notion that it's embarrassing to ask for help, or it's embarrassing, or you should feel embarrassed to say, oh, I'm really stuck, I don't know what to do, somebody please help me. But Dumbledore told Harry in his last dying hour that help will always come to those who ask for it. And I think if we can put that pride and that ego aside and we reach out to each other, like small businesses reach out to each other and say, hey, I saw this on Instagram, do you think you can help me with this? Even if it's things like, say, Photoshop, or even who's your delivery partner? Do you mind if I get in touch? Can you share that contact with me? Or even things like, once, if we are able to go back to work and go back to the world, even if it's things like sharing a space, sharing rent, sharing bills, maybe that's something that we need to look at. Because I think working together is the only way that we can actually realistically move forward from this. And I think this time at home is important, because this is the time for all of us to kind of evaluate where we want to go, what values are important to us as a business. And you can experiment, like you can try new things, speak to the people around you, get feedback from people, test things out and see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You might fail, but that's not a bad thing. Isaac Newton failed so many times before he discovered electricity. It came to him by chance. Albert Einstein failed so many times. You're not going to get the answer overnight, and this is the perfect time for you to try to fail fast and to learn and move forward and to see what works for you and what works for your company. Yes, I think that's pretty much what I have to say. I think that's enough for now.
Thank you, Natalie, for those insights. And finally, we have Shana Dandeniya. She is the director of Café Kumbuk, +94, and Quality Control.
Thank you, Shyam. Thanks for having me on this webinar, especially with all these amazing other business owners and founders. So as Shyam said, apart from Café Kumbuk, I also have my own social media company called Quality Control, and that works with a number of clients from smaller startups to larger, more corporate clients. And I think it's safe to say that every single industry has been deeply affected by this pandemic. I've been using this lockdown time to learn a lot more. I've been a bit of a nerd actually, and been brushing up on as much social media knowledge and trying to absorb as much as I can in this time, in order to be able to serve my business and my clients better. And so it's really nice to be able to share a few of my learnings here with you guys. Social media is an incredibly powerful tool, especially in this day and age, as we all know. But specifically, I'm going to talk about Instagram because we don't have a lot of time. One of the quotes that I read recently, so I saw it on the Hatch Instagram page, and it's by one of their mentors, Naomi. And I think she really nailed it when she said that the brands that allow their voices to be heard during a crisis like this or a time like this are the ones that are most likely going to survive on the other side of it. I mean, there's a bit more to it than that, but you get the gist. The main thing is that you'd want to use this time not to go completely silent. You don't want to, take it to the other side of it and completely oversell, but finding that sweet spot in the middle, I think, is really important. So everyone is on social media right now, browsing in their spare time, and Instagram has seen a significant spike in engagement, especially on platforms like Instagram. And even boosting and ad spends have seen better engagement as of late, due to the fact that I think a lot of brands are just not utilizing these tools because they might be thinking that there's really no point in a time like this. But I would suggest that, you should actually try and sponsor and stay in the minds of your consumers right now, because even if they don't have the power to purchase right now, maybe later on or in the future, when they do feel comfortable, they will then look to your product and they'll remember it. Now is a great time to really communicate your brand values. I think that's super important right now. So as I said, people will think twice about purchasing a service or product, unlike before, where things like income and job security weren't such a worry. But this doesn't mean that we should just completely shut off all communication. Right now is the time to keep people reassured. And I think that's the big word that sticks in my mind, is reassurance, and making sure that that we're communicating to our customers our honest, authentic brand voice, and explaining to them that things are hard right now, but they're gonna be okay. We don't know when. There's a lot of unknowns in this kind of situation, but eventually things are gonna pick up, and when they do, we have to then grab those opportunities and move forward. For Café Kumbuk, one thing that has been very powerful and part of our ethos for a very long time has been transparency. And I believe that that's everything. In the food industry right now, I know there's a lot of people that might be scared to eat from out because they just don't know who it's being made by, or, where it's coming from, where is the produce being bought from. So for me, I've always tried to communicate that to my customers, explaining exactly who's in the kitchen, where am I buying from? And it's not a perfect supply chain by any means at the moment. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think if you can be very honest and show the struggles that you're going through, I think that sort of resonates with people, and they really understand that you're trying to get things going, and that you are working towards, being okay again. So I think in terms of the kind of content, it has to be light, positive. There is room for also something a little more personal, a little deeper. And I think things that, for different brands, if you're in the food industry, it might be recipe videos or food demos or things like that. Rukshi was saying how for RUMPUNCH, they did, they're doing their workout campaign. And so there could be things like exercising or meditation, guided meditation or yoga that you can do videos for. IGTV is amazing. It really does, boost a lot of engagement and gets people really sort of engaging with your brand. So I think that's a good tool to use for sure. And then, things like home improvement ideas, or even just little hacks for productivity. I know that when I'm sitting in front of the laptop for too long, I go a little mad. So it would be nice to, to look at a brand on Instagram and really understand some of the things that I can implement at home that are going to help me. just to sum everything up, it's definitely not an easy time. And I think the best that we can do is be honest, relatable, support our community in whatever ways we can. You know, one thing that social media is great for is that it opens up so many conversations with past, present, and even potential customers. And this support and positive energy is definitely, I think, what's going to get us through in the difficult weeks and months ahead.
Thank you, Shana. We can open it up now for questions. I actually had a question for Randhula. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a little bit more on the health check that you mentioned during this session.
Sure. So it's really a very basic short-term thing we all need to do in evaluating where we are right now as a business, how strong our structure is, and if it's too heavy to sustain in the long run or in the medium term, if this continues, or if this continuity of the lockdown has been too much for our business, what can we do in order to make it lighter? So this is not in the typical sense of the old school way of really cutting off salaries or letting go of employees, but really how can we look at innovative ways like Natalie mentioned, skill sharing. If we have 40 people without a job to do right now, there might be somebody else in a different sector who's immediately needing 40 people with the same set of skills who can give employment in the short run with the short-term pivot that they have gone into, who needs these skills right now. So in that way, we give a source of income to these 40 people who's been with us also, and helping somebody else to sustain their business in the short run. So doing a quick health check like this, and trying to also then explore avenues of how to solve any bad situation that we have in hand right now, which will not help us in the long run, is one thing to look at. So in finance, in terms of finance and HR, and also to be attuned to all these relief measures that is announced by the central bank, and to really go into a very practical conversation with your bank or your relationship manager of what applies or what not, because all these things comes with deeper conditions and deadlines, and really it's not as rosy as it seems. So it's very important we understand what our game plan can be in order to prepare ourselves. And when evaluating all of these things, we will also be able to understand what measures can we take in order to make a short-term pivot, if at all if we have to. So like I mentioned, it's a very it's rather a straightforward case, more of a straightforward case for essential services. But what about craft sector? What about traditional industries? What about these cottage industries that don't have really a need right now, or at the top of the head of the people? How do they adjust? So a good example is Celine, who went right ahead and introduced a very healthy international standard mask in order to keep her employees employed and her factories functioning. So like that, and that doesn't mean Celine's total business strategy in the long run has changed. It is a very short-term replacement or a pivot that she's done in order to keep herself sustained. So doing the health check will also help us understand what do we have in hand in order for us to make a change, and if at all, if we are able to make that change or not, and what can we do if we are unable to make that change. What do we have to do in terms of changes or in terms of deep and meaningful partnerships? What more do we need to explore in order to make ourselves more sustainable for the longer run?
Thank you, Randhula. We have a question from Wazim. How long do you reckon it will take for SMEs to get back on track, especially in a time like this, where basic essentials are going to be the priority on everyone's minds? And what needs to be done in order to change or be your strategy? Perhaps that's something everyone on our panel can maybe touch on.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. I think it's hard to put a timeline, but I think the SMEs that will come out of it or be fast to react to it would be those who adapt and also understanding what the new market paradigm is, what the new market requirements are, I mean, there are opportunities out there. So if you look at certain sectors, there was another forum that I listened to, and the CEOs and directors in that forum were saying each business within their divisions or their companies were seeing different rates of growth or decline. So there are opportunities out there. I think it's important to look at your core, what strengths you have, what resources you have, and then see how that aligns to the new market paradigm and customer requirements. Obviously, those with products that have more elastic demand will do better. But like I said, retail is definitely a more elastic demand. So it's a tough one at the moment, but we're seeing opportunity, like I said, in fitness, in activewear. There's also other areas that we've seen. I don't want to talk too much about it because we're not really, it's work in progress. So hopefully it will work out in the next month or so, but it's a few projects that we're excited. So it's a case of adapt or die pretty much in this situation.
Does anyone else have some input on that? Natalie or Shana? I think Anaz Hussein also had a similar question about the opportunities available in general during a crisis like this. I hope that kind of answered your question, Anaz, as well. Another question that we had earlier was, how do you go about changing in a situation like this without altering your brand identity? Perhaps Randhula or Shana might be able to shed some light on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think in terms of I think in terms of keeping your brand identity, that is, I mean, if you have a strong brand identity, and if that's something that has been sort of flowing through from the very get-go, I think it's fairly easy to kind of stay within your your brand values. It all comes back to that, right? It's like, what are your core values, and how are you going to, even if you have to pivot your business, how are you going to make those core values still part of the pivot? And so for us, it's been definitely challenging because we've never focused on delivery before, but obviously that is the demand now. I don't know when I'm going to be able to open up the physical cafe space. So what we've done is we've put all of our sort of thinking and vision towards this online platform, trying to figure out how we can strengthen our delivery, our delivery to people's homes. But I think in all of that, we're still very much trying to keep the core values, which are, locally sourced, trying to, buy from other small businesses, supporting other small businesses, like Naomi, who does, salon creperie, salted caramel. So things like brands like that, where we know we've always had a link with them, and we're still going to push them forward even through this new time. It's definitely challenging, but I think if you can really stay true to your core values, then I think it can be a lot easier in the long run.
Thank you, Shana. Anosha had a question. What advice do you see any brand standing up during this crisis if it is a startup? Not particularly sure. If you would it mean you want to ask about what you could do during this time if you're a startup challenges? Okay.
Maybe just a comment there. I'd say defer any capital investment, keep your organization lean. There is no certainty at the moment. You don't know when this is going to end, if there's going to be a second wave, third wave. So like I said, it's keeping your organization lean, flexible, and making decision-making as quick, as less hierarchical as possible. You are going to have to learn on the go and do it on the go and figure it out. There's really no room here to plan for 12 months and hope the plan works. But I think it's good to have a plan. see how it works out and you adapt to it. But the question here is speed and adaptability. That would be my advice, and really maybe hold back a bit on certain capital investments and fixed costs, because again, that kind of hinders your responsiveness and flexibility.
Thanks, Binara. Kirtana Krishna Kumar, how would import restrictions affect the restaurant industry? Not all products can be locally substituted. Perhaps that's something maybe Shana can.
Yeah, sure. So we have a lot of items at the cafe as well that, you know, well, not a lot, but a few things that we've got, like latte mixes and stuff. These are things that moving forward, we're now reconsidering and reevaluating. We're thinking, okay, what if the lockdown is to happen again, if things are to close again, how are we going to manage this? Because you know, with the restrictions now on imports, for the foreseeable future, we really don't know how that's going to play out. So I would say try and find, I mean, you might not be able to substitute something, you know, specifically, but if you can find maybe an alternative, something that you might be able to keep on your menu for the long run, rather than something that you have to stop and start over the next couple of months because of these restrictions. It's definitely not going to be easy. There are, I know for a fact that there are certain products that, you know, imported products that we might be running out of because everyone's, you know, rushing to get it. But I think this is an important time where we start to think about supporting our local, you know, our local economy, and starting to think about what are the things that we can do that are really going to impact Sri Lanka, and how we're going to make the the lives of people over here better, and how we're going to really give that business to them in some way. You know, like I said, it depends on really the kind of the business that you have, the type of restaurant. But I think if you can, you know, sort of change your thinking to fit that, I think then we're onto a good thing.
If I could just jump in there, I think echoing everything that Shana said, and even beyond the restaurant industry, it's all about how you adjust your mentality and mindset and use this opportunity to just explore and be creative as much as you can as a business, because locally we have so much of resources that we don't explore in the name of convenience. And this is a great time really to reinvent ourselves and to make use of those resources and opportunities and dig a little deeper, because inherently, if you talk about really looking at a sustainable future together, we have a history of really having such great practices of being sustainable in our lifestyles overall. And there's so much that is being taken from here outside, because we have such inherent qualities and values in our resources, from jackfruit to minerals to all of that. So how do we really add value here for our own sake and give it back to the people who are willing to pay the price here? So how do we really use these resources and abundance that we have here and create value here to create a great quality of life? So I think it's a great time to reinvent and be creative.
Thank you, Randhula. Thank you, Shana. Does anyone have any more questions? You can type it in the chat or the Q&A, or you can come on live and ask your question yourselves. What's the future of influencer marketing? I'm not sure who sent that in. Interesting question. Would anyone like to jump in and answer that?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely, you know, obviously right now things are a little sensitive, and we have to be, you know, I think we have to be careful about who is it that we're choosing to link up with and to to promote the brand. And I think, again, it has to be done in a very specific and sensitive way. I've seen a couple of influencer marketing things sort of go wrong or be misinterpreted over this time. So I think it is really important to know that the person that you are choosing to promote your goods is someone who has the same values as you. I think now Rukshi and Binara, you guys are doing it with, with Tarya and a few others. And I think that's amazing because, those are people that you've been working with for a long time. And I think in terms of promoting, this whole sweat and fitness range, it's a great way to do it, especially because they're doing their own fitness classes online. So I think there's a lot to still be able to do with influencer marketing. I think it just has to be done in the right sensitive way.
Just to add to what Shana said as well, we've kind of used this time to take a step back and also assess the influencers that we want to work with. We definitely see it as a very good, like a very useful, a strong tool, because there's if you have the right influencers who have high engagement, it obviously drives more traffic and engagement with the brand. So that's just something that we've been doing during this time, kind of assessing who we work with, who's kind of led to conversions with the influencers that we work with, who's actually who's resulting in actionable results for the brand. We've been doing that for Sri Lanka and also a few overseas markets that we're hoping to target as well. Yeah, we just see it as a very impactful way to take the brand message, the values across. But again, you need to identify, you need to kind of work with them, figure out whether they're the right partners or not. So this takes time. So it's good to use this time to kind of at least shortlist some people that you want to work with.
Thank you. Fraudulent businesses are on the rise. So how do we help customers differentiate?
If I just jump in and address it really very shortly, I think it's all about values. It's all about being transparent. It's all about speaking clearly about your values, about how you treat your people, how you look at your people, how you value your customers. And even now, even if you don't have any business interaction going with your customers, how you still authentically communicate with them, not in terms of making a sale, but in terms of really having that exchange and relationship going. That defines an entrepreneur with value. That defines a brand with value. So it's not only what you say. You can put up a status or you can put up a nice post that defines your value in a very nice way, but it's also in your actions. What are you doing to the people that you're working with? That's how people really make a definition, and it's not a difficult thing at all to, as a customer. I mean, people are really smart these days. People are very well connected and networked, and you just have to put yourself out there and be transparent and honest. And the distinction and the difference is so clear. You don't have to speak about openly about a non-transparent or fraudulent product because it's so obvious to see. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Randhula. Anyone else would like to pitch in there?
Just to add on a different topic there, I think the whole concept of the whole situation has really forced businesses to go digital. And one element of going digital is the trust that consumers have with the brand. If they don't trust you, they won't buy from you. Because you don't really have that face-to-face relationship. So it's really important, as Randhula said, to build that transparency, the trust, so that people know that when they actually order from you, they're going to get what they ordered. And if there is an issue, that you will address that, and that they can order with ease, convenience, and without any worry. So you just need to take the worry out of the whole digital transaction. Otherwise, your website or your digital interface is really not going to pick up.
Can I just say, I think something that's worked for us in the last couple of weeks since we went online as well was communication. I've resisted going online all this time because we've quite enjoyed having people come into the shop and talking to them and knowing their names and knowing their stories. But we've been forced to do that in the last couple of weeks. And one of the things we've wanted, or we've tried to do, is how do we take that physical interaction we had with our customer base, and how do we take that online, so that they know that we are still contactable, we are still reachable, they can still speak to us. And I found that when they are not sure, there's been a lot of people who said, look, we can't pay online, we want to pay only cash on delivery, because they're just not sure if they're going to actually physically get the product. And communication, I found, has really been helpful. And I find that when I give them my number and I say, look, your order is going to come to you within 2 to 3 days. I'm going to send you a message when the delivery guy picks it up from me. And he's going to call you when he's 30 minutes away from your house. And I get constant calls and WhatsApp messages. Where's my order? Is my order coming today? Is it coming today? But I make it a point to always communicate and reassure them. Like Shana said, reassurance is a big thing. And if you communicate and you reassure with them, I find that becomes a little less, like, it's a little easier for them to do when they know that, okay, there's somebody at the other end they can actually communicate with and talk to and get through to. It becomes a bit easier.
Thank you, Natalie. If there are no more questions, we will wrap up today's session. Thank you to all our panelists for taking the time today to be here and talk to everyone about this. I'm sure everyone learned a lot. I know I did. So thank you so much for taking the time. Everyone who tuned in, thank you so much for taking the time on Monday to join us. It was great to have you. Thank you, everyone. It was great having you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.